So yesterday I tweeted that this video would probably come out today because I've been having some problems with my throat. So I went today and I got it checked out, and there's good news. It's strep. So, nevertheless, this is really important to talk about. The results of TIFF. They are extremely heavy precursors to the Academy Awards. Not just the winners, but also just certain films that we were kind of waiting to hear from to see how they would turn out. I already talked about The Goldfinch, and I talked about a couple of films from Venice Film Festival. There's only one real repeat that I'm going to talk about in this video that I also talked about from Venice, but I'm going to touch on that really briefly. So I want to talk about a couple, films that were seen for the first time and were reviewed for the first time, and what I think those reviews mean in terms of where the films are going to be placed. And I also want to talk about the 3 top films that were announced at Venice Film Festival, which I think many would agree was relatively shocking to a certain degree. First movie I want to talk about is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which is the second attempt to receive Oscar nominations from a Mr. Rogers story. Won't You Be My Neighbor failed at that, and it's time for an actual biopic tackling of the subject. And the film opened to very solid reviews. They're not impeccable, but they're where they need to be for this film to have the Oscar potential that it should, just with the subject matter, the cast, and the director that it has. It was one of those early contenders that many people could put their finger on and go, if that turns out to be as good as it should be, that movie will certainly be a contender. And it's looking to be that way. I don't think it's going to be a front runner in many categories. I think what you're kind of looking at it with is a very similar situation to what Marielle Heller had with Can You Ever Forgive Me, which will probably be the one difference that I see will be a Best Picture nomination. I do think it can make its way into Best Picture, but it would be one of those padding nominations. It's not one that has a chance to win. It's just one of those nominations that kind of gets the category to 8 to 10, whatever they decide to nominate this year. I think Tom Hanks is probably going to pick up a nomination. What?
Can I be in the background?
No. Go to the DH later. It's been 20 years since he picked up a nom, and like I said in one of the early contenders videos, I think this film is going to be a vehicle for him when it comes to campaigning. I think they're really going to push for him to make it into that supporting actor category, I believe is what they're pushing him in, and I don't even think a win is off the table. People seem relatively confident that Brad Pitt is going to win for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't see that as being an impossibility, but I don't see that as being a sure bet just yet. I think he would have a lot of momentum to carry over. I think Globes he could probably take, but if he takes the SAG, then I think he's looking pretty good. But I think Tom Hanks is genuinely one to look out for in terms of a win in this category, and I also think you have a potential screenplay nomination, and I think those would kind of be the big ones that this film is looking at. So it's definitely one to check out when it rolls around in the theaters if you're trying to check all the movies off of your bucket list. I think that the reviews that this opened to is a pivotal point for this movie in terms of moving forward into the Oscar race. Another film that opened to very strong reviews, one that I was a little shaky on in terms of being great or not great, was Ford v Ferrari. The trailers made this one look a little strange, but I had said that I think the marketing was tailored a lot more towards trying to appeal to a wide audience. They tried to make it look, super intense and epic, and I don't know if it entirely will be that. I think there will be a lot of character study in the film, centering around kind of this epic plot line. But the film did open to really strong reviews, and I think it's kind of cemented itself a spot in Best Picture. Like I said, I don't think it's particularly a front-runner to win just yet. I think it would really have to gain a lot of steam to take one of those top spots, but I think it has sort of found its way into picture, and I think it'll probably find its way into screenplay as well. Mangold is a possibility in terms of getting into director, but director is pretty loaded. Gold Derby is very confident in Sam Mendes for 1917. I'm waiting to see how that film turns out. I'm not 100% confident in that film being astounding, but if that film flops, I think you're looking at an opening in the Best Director category that Mangold might be able to squeeze himself into. I have less confidence in Christian Bale than I did back when I made the Contenders video. The Oscars love him, so there's always a possibility for him, but the the actor category, the leading actor and supporting actor categories this year are looking pretty tight, and I think squeezing Bale in there for this particular part might not necessarily be a shoo-in. I don't think Damon is going to happen really at all. I don't see that being a possibility. Again, Christian Bale seems to be the one that's going to carry the emotional weight of the film, so if anyone's going to squeeze a spot in there, it's going to be Christian Bale, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think where you're going to want to be looking for it would be in picture, and then in screenplay, and then maybe some technical noms as well, maybe a costume design, a production design, even depending, I think a lot of it's practical effects, but, you know, the Oscars love those, you know, kind of low-key type of visual effects. Like, they don't give Best Visual Effects to Avengers, you know, they give it to First Man, they give it to Ex Machina over Star Wars. Like, it's that kind of shit, you know, you have to kind of pay attention to those little details of where they give awards. The last two I want to talk about are both A24 films, some of the top campaigning A24 films, I think, to be looking forward to. The Lighthouse, which I've already touched on, keeps getting stronger and stronger reviews. People are loving this film, and I am fascinated to see it. I have not watched the trailers yet. I want to see nothing before I get into this film. I'm super excited to see it. I think a big place to look for it in, even if it doesn't wind up all across the board, is Willem Dafoe. It's become blatantly clear that in the recent years the Academy is becoming a very big fan of Willem Dafoe's work. You had a nomination for The Florida Project, and you had a very shocking upset nomination for At Eternity's Gate, which a lot of people had ruled out. So it's, you know, like I said, it's clear that they're I'm sorry, I'm so sick. It's clear that they're showing a bit of favoritism towards Willem Dafoe for his recent performances, and I think that this could be another one to look out for in terms of a nomination. I believe he's going supporting as well. I think he's almost a lock in supporting. People are talking about this performance like it's one of his best ever, and he's got a very vast career, and if the Academy is loving him more and more, they're going to love this performance, so I think he's one to look out for. My biggest thing in terms of working against this film is I think A24 is going to put their campaigning elsewhere. I think they're going to fold a lot of it into The Farewell, since that was so well received critically. It's got the cultural impact going for it, and it's managed to hold its ground a lot in terms of momentum since it was released, and it was a very early release. I think it'll be a big success at the Globes, and then I think that will carry over into Oscar season, so I think A24 is going to be looking a lot at pooling their resources into The Farewell. Same thing with Uncut Gems was the other one I wanted to talk about, which opened to also very strong reviews. The Safdie brothers follow-up to Good Time, which saw absolutely no love at the Oscars, but that had, I believe, like an August-September release date, which is very odd for the Academy Awards. This one is positioned a lot better. It's at that Christmas release date, which is arguably pushing it a little bit, but premiering at TIFF is still a big deal, and they'll get those screeners out in time. There's no trailer for it yet, so there's not a whole lot to say about it, other than the fact that critics are liking it. If A24 really wants to push this one, I think it's a possibility. Maybe you could get Sandler in there. That would be kind of crazy. Maybe a Best Picture nomination. I'm not entirely confident in that. I think the style of it might not tailor to the Academy as much as A24 would want it to. I also don't think the Safdie brothers give half a shit about Oscar nominations. I think they would have put Good Time somewhere else if they had thought that. So, you know, I think Lighthouse and Uncut Gems are both possibilities. I would lean more towards Lighthouse in being a possibility. I think they're movies to keep your eye on, and as we move forward, to definitely keep track of. So let's talk about the top three, shall we? Which is a very big deal. I do have some notes for this that I'm going to pull up, because the top three winners of TIFF are a pretty big deal. Since 2012, every TIFF winner has at least been a Best Picture nominee. The last time a TIFF winner was not a Best Picture nominee was 2011. So they're on a pretty solid streak, unless that changes this year, which we'll talk about in a minute. And two of those movies have won. That was 12 Years a Slave and then Green Book, which, you know, you can talk to yourselves about. So you have a winner and then you have two runners-up. So let's start with Parasite, which I think in winning at least top 3 at TIFF and being as well received as it has been since Cannes. I think it had kind of the perfect releases, if that makes any sense. A lot of films can really fuck themselves over with releases. Call Me By Your Name was an example of that. But Parasite coming out as early as it did to critics back in Cannes, and then managing to kind of swiftly move their way through a lot of film festivals, releasing in a lot of different places, and then kind of hitting TIFF like this right at the perfect moment, and getting into those top 3 spots, I think you're looking at a perfect lock for Best Foreign Film. I don't see anything topping it for a win in that category, and I absolutely think you're looking at that taking the win. Or what is it now? Best International Film? I know they changed the name. But I think this even elevates it to a possible for just a Best Picture nomination. The critical acclaim is high for this film. It's really high. And I think with that, you could even be looking at a possibility for a Best Director nomination. Last year's Academy Awards show that they're very willing to do that, with Cuarón getting in there, and I don't know how to pronounce his name from Cold War, so I'm not going to try. It's like Pavel Pawlowski, but he made it in. Foreign films are becoming more and more prevalent in the big Oscar categories, and I think Parasite is going to continue that trend. This win means a lot for it, even though it didn't actually win. Being in the top 3 is a huge deal for it, and I think it's one to continue to look out for. I'm very excited to see it. It's finally going to hit here soon. I've heard nothing but incredible things about it, so keep your eye on that one too. Hello? The second of the 3 films that took the top 3 spots was Marriage Story, which is the film I talked about at Venice, so I don't have as much to say about it, but taking as high of a slot as it took here at TIFF is another massive deal for this film. The critical acclaim is insane for this movie. Critics love it, audiences love it, and I think the Academy is going to love it. This movie becomes more and more of a massive contender as it goes. Netflix is backing it very heavily, it seems, and Roma last year showed that Netflix is a powerhouse, and it's no longer we can fuck with Netflix. They are contenders now. I think you're looking at a Best Picture possible frontrunner. I think that it might have a couple movies contending with it, but I think it absolutely has a shot. I think Baumbach has made a significant explosion into the Best Director and Best Screenplay categories. I think he's definitely going to show up in both of those. I think Adam Driver has a pretty solid shot at Best Leading Actor, and the question of Scarlett Johansson now being Leading Actress, I think she's absolutely cemented herself a nomination. The question becomes whether she will win. The one that everyone is talking about possibly besting her is Renee Zellweger for Judy. What interests me about that race is the fact that Judy itself, A, has a September release date, and B, is looking to just be a fine film with an outstanding performance, which oftentimes, especially in the leading actress category, can be kind of detrimental towards those possibilities. My example I like to use was Natalie Portman for Jackie, losing to Emma Stone for La La Land. Jackie sort of fell off in terms of Oscar nominations. There was a lot of debate over the quality of that film. Some people really liked it, some people really didn't. It seemed to at the least be experimental in terms of being a biopic, but Judy looks to be much more of a conventional, like moderately fine film with a really great performance at the front of it, plus it's like a career type of performance, and the Oscars love that. They've given a lot of attention to Renee Zellweger before, so it is a very interesting race, and I'm kind of interested to see whether, if Judy being not that great of a film and not showing up seemingly anywhere else at the Academy Awards, is going to kind of bump her down a little bit and give Scarlett Johansson a little bit of leeway to make her way up. One way or another, Marriage Story is an absolute necessity to see when it hits Netflix or it hits theaters. It's coming pretty soon. It's got a pretty prime release date, and you can't not see this one. You gotta see fucking Marriage Story. And the big one, the twist of the fucking century. Jojo Rabbit takes TIFF. Remember way back when you all told me Jojo Rabbit wasn't a contender? I fucking knew it. Okay? I admit this was a shock. You know, I don't think after the reviews came out for the film anyone saw this coming. Someone tweeted at me the Rotten Tomatoes score for the film, which is solid, but Rotten Tomatoes is a load of horse shit. So I don't follow that garbage. The Metascore is low. It's like Bohemian Rhapsody low, which I guess doesn't fucking matter because Bohemian Rhapsody was wildly successful when Oscar season came around. But winning TIFF is a big deal. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a front runner in Best Picture to win. Again, only 2 since 2012 have won Best Picture. 12 Years a Slave, which was always going to win Best Picture, and Green Book, which still makes fucking people's minds boggle. I don't think Jojo Rabbit's going to win Best Picture, but again, since 2011, like the last time a movie that won TIFF wasn't nominated for Best Picture was 2011. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see where this film winds up, and it's really hard to predict without seeing it. The good reviews for this film say what I had said back in the Oscar Contenders video, that Taika Waititi is really good at balancing heart and satire, which I think is a lot of what the Academy really likes. It just, with the reviews that had come out, it seemed like it didn't work. Maybe it's just ultimately a very divisive film. It could be a love it or hate it. You could fall on either side of it, but you know, I can't say as much as I'd like to without seeing it. It's interesting to think about where it could show up, because the Best Director race is so tight, it's hard for me to see Taika Waititi getting in there. I think a screenplay nomination is a solid bet now, after it takes TIFF. I think that's something to look forward to there. I don't really know what performances would show up. I think Johansson's going to campaign so heavily for leading actress for Marriage Story that they're not going to pay much attention to her supporting role in Jojo Rabbit. She's the only one that I could really see showing up for this film, and I don't even think that's going to happen. But this is certainly a shocking turn of events, one that I'm very excited to see where it goes and how it turns out, and I think most people are as well. But that's it. I apologize for how brief some of these discussions were, but my throat is actually, like, this is pretty fucking brutal. I'm, you know, 3 weeks into school and strep is hitting, which is not great. But I hope I kind of got my points across as to how important this was. There have been a lot of videos coming out for me recently. There's very simply just been a lot to talk about. I think this is probably going to be it for a couple weeks while I have a bunch of schoolwork to do and stuff to get done. The next video I would look out for would be the Joker review, which I should be able to do October 4th, the release date of the film. My review for that should be out. Thank you guys so much for watching. There are a bunch of new subscribers coming in. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you guys watching the new content. Thank you so much. Let me know what you thought of the TIFF winners in the comments below. This is a big deal, so I'm interested to hear all of your thoughts. I want to know what's going through all of your heads as to what this means for the upcoming Oscar race. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.